All right, Rob, we have started the recording.
Great. Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. It's 2 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. And we will start out our agenda with a quick roll call of commissioners who are present, and then we'll move down our agenda. So Ken or Jenny or someone want to take roll, we'll start there.
It'll be my pleasure. Commissioner Auxier? Don't see him yet. Commissioner Beach? See you there.
Present.
Commissioner Freeman?
Present.
Commissioner Solomon?
Here.
And then Senator Przansky? I'm sure he's still in here.
Well, we know where he is, yeah.
Yep. And then Representative Lewis, I have not seen. Okay, and then Vice Chair Bovet.
Present. So we do
Thank you,
have a
sir.
quorum and hopefully
We do have quorum, and I will let you know if I see Jeff Auxier pop on as well.
Fantastic. All right, well, we'll start out where we always start out and see if there's any public comment, anybody from the public who wants to talk with the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission about something not on the agenda that we'll otherwise get to. Now would be the time to chat with us. Is there anybody who would like to speak with the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission? If you could just raise your hand or make yourself known. Not seeing or hearing anything. Let's move on to our first agenda item, which is a Justice Reinvestment Grant Amendment request. It looks like we have 3 requests for amendments, and it looks like Ian's going to walk us through these.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Vice Chair Bovet. I am pulling up my PowerPoint presentation, but as that gets pulled up, my name is Ian Davidson. I am the Justice Reinvestment Program Manager. And as Vice Chair Bovet just said, we have, excuse me one moment. Excellent. Okay, we have 3 amendment requests before you today. So as a quick reminder, for Justice Reinvestment Grant Program amendments, as well as the other amendments, grant programs that we have amendments processes for, we bring items to you under 2 conditions. One is when an amendment request movement exceeds 10% of the total grant award, and then the second is when a new program is created. For other amendment requests that do not meet those criteria, we as staff have the authority to approve those amendment requests. So the 3 amendment requests we are bringing to you today fit those 2 criteria. The first amendment request is from Union County. They are requesting to move a little more than $76,000 to a deputy district attorney position, about $35,000 to a chief deputy district attorney position. And these funds are coming from $35,000 of that is coming from funds that they were previously spending to house adults in custody at a nearby county jail, not within Union County. They no longer need that, and so they're requesting to reallocate those funds. And then they are requesting about $75,000 that was previously designated to pay for a parole and probation position that conducted LSCMI assessments, so those risk need responsivity assessments. That is no longer needed, and those responsibilities have been absorbed by a different position. And so those functions are still occurring. However, the funds for that particular position are no longer needed. We as staff are recommending approval of this amendment request. And Vice Chair, I can go through these, all 3 of them, and pause for questions, or I'll defer to your preference.
Why don't we just see if there's any questions about each one, and then maybe we'll just take them as a blank motion at the end. It looks like Commissioner Solomon already has a question. Go ahead, Commissioner Solomon.
I do. So Ian, can you give me a little more context around the DA positions? How do they achieve the JRI goals of reducing recidivism or our dependence on prison beds? Or are they part of like a 416 program where they're doing downward departures? I struggle a little bit with just funding DA positions out of JRI dollars.
Sure, yeah, it is akin to a 416 kind of program. And so the LSCMI assessments are still being conducted, and then those inform the actions within the prosecutor's office.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about Union County before we have Ian move on to the next one? Not seeing any. Go ahead, the next one, Ian.
Okay. Next county is Lake County. They are requesting to move $31,000 to partially fund a drug court probation officer position. So this is a position that is already funded partially with CJC grant funds, however, not with Justice Reinvestment grant funds. It's partially funded by the specialty court grant funds. And these funds are being reallocated from 3 different buckets of money. The first is $17,000 of funding that was previously, or that is presently designated for housing supports. The need is not what was estimated when they submitted their initial application. $10,000 of the funding is coming from what was previously or presently allocated for books and electronic monitoring. Again, the need is not as high as was previously anticipated, and then $4,400 of funds designated for grant administration or admin. And so they're asking to move those funds to support the drug court probation officer. And we as staff are recommending approval of this amendment request.
Any questions from commissioners about Lake County's proposed amendments to their JRI grant?
Commissioner, if I may, this is Jake Greer from Lake County. I just want to commend Mr. Davidson for his picture of our Deep Creek Falls that are included in the slide. Not very many people capture that, and that's one of the beautiful things about Lake County. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Ian. Actually, it's a beautiful picture, I gotta say. All right, doesn't look like we have any questions from commissioners about Lake County's request. And might as well move on to the third one, Ian.
All right. The final request before you today from the Justice Reinvestment Grant Program is from Harney County. They're asking to move $7,000 to replace 2 shower and bath combos in their transitional housing. So in past years, Justice Reinvestment funding was used to purchase transitional housing, and it's due for some maintenance in the bathroom areas. And so they're asking to move $7,000 to cover the cost of that. And then they're also asking to move a little more than $10,000 for pretrial monitoring so that their pretrial clients do not incur the costs of their new pretrial program in Harney County. And the funds are coming from funds that are designated for the reentry court's personnel and participant supports. And that's as a result of less than anticipated needs in those 2 categories in their reentry court. Like the other 2 amendment requests, we are recommending that you approve this request.
Great, thanks, Ian. And just for the record, I noticed that Commissioner Auxier is now joined us as well. So we have a full slate of the commission. Are there any questions from any commissioners about the Harney County proposal? And if not, it'd be nice to have a motion. Looks like Commissioner Solomon's got something for us.
Yes, I move that we approve the amendment request to the Justice Reinvestment Grant Program for Lake, Union, and Harney counties.
It's been moved to approve the 3 requested amendments to their JRI grants for Lake, Union, and Harney counties. Commissioner Solomon's made that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Commissioner Beach. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. Ken, if you want to take the roll.
Gladly. Commissioner Auxier,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Bovet.
Yes. So that motion
And that passes unanimously. Yep.
All right, well, the next item we have on our agenda looks like a coronavirus emergency supplemental formula grant amendment request, and looks like Gerard is going to handle that one.
Hi, thank you, Vice Chair Bovet and members of the commission. I'm going to pull up my slide right now. One second. I think I'm having some technical issues trying to get up the right slide. Okay, can you see the slide? All right, thank you. So, hi, my name's Gerardo Aviles Leon. I'm a program analyst here at CJC, and I work on the agency's federal grants. And today I have a budget modification request from Washington County for the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Grant. And just a quick review, this grant was used to assist in preventing, responding, and preparing for the coronavirus. So the budget modification request comes from Washington County, and they're requesting to move roughly 69,000 to personnel from their other budget category to cover overtime expenses they've incurred at their Washington Community Correction Center due to staff being sick with the coronavirus and then having to cover shifts, which eventually led to overtime expenses. Some of the items that are coming out of their other fund budget is treatment support for 10,000, housing subsidies for 33,000, and telecommuting equipment for roughly 26,000. The other spending in these budget categories are due to funds coming from other sources, which didn't allow them to spend all the CESF funds. Washington County's total award is roughly $115,000, with this request being $69,000, which is above the 10% threshold and would require the commission approval for this budget. And that was all I had for Washington County's budget amendment request.
And is there a staff recommendation that goes along with that?
Yes, this is staff approved, as it would cover one of the allowable expenses for the coronavirus funding, which would be for overtime.
Great. Well, looks like we have a question from Commissioner Beach.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bovet. I was under the impression that these coronavirus funds, the grant ended in January of 2023. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is correct. And this would cover expenses that incurred during the project period, as where they're trying to reallocate some of their funding to spend down their grant.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from commissioners about this particular proposal? All right, I need to place something on the record here real quick before we have a motion, which is I'm going to abstain from this vote since we have a full consortium. I don't have an actual conflict or a potential conflict because none of these funds affect my job of Washington County, but based on tradition here at the Criminal Justice Commission, I would prefer to abstain since it does involve my employer. But in the meantime, is there a motion on this particular proposal?
I'm willing to make that motion.
This is Freeman. I'll second it.
Like we have a motion from Commissioner Auxier and a second from Commissioner Freeman to approve Washington County's request to modify their coronavirus grant from CJC. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing any. Ken, you want to take the roll on this one?
My pleasure. Commissioner Auxier,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Bovet, I've noted your abstention for the record.
Thank you, Ken. All right. That passes unanimously as well. I think we're now at our last item, even though we're only 16 minutes into this meeting. We're going pretty quick. We have our last item, agency updates, legislative update, and a variety of things from Ken, Kelly, and Ryan. So I'll turn it over to you, Ken.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bovet. Yes, we're hoping and planning to, this will be one of the last of our quickie meetings for a little while. So what I'm going to talk about here today before turning it over to Kelly and Ryan is a legislative update for bills that are potentially impacting CJC that we're tracking right now. But real quick, while we still have Commissioner Auxier on the line, I want to talk about our plan for our first in-person commission meeting next month here in Salem. And so I just wanted to run through that what our hope is, and I wanted to ask a question or two as well, is that we have booked a space that we can hold our in-person meeting. Our plan is to have a much more robust meeting. We're actually going to at that point, roll out our next biennium grant cycle funding timelines, details about justice reinvestments, the opening of our specialty court grant process as well. We'll have information on our state course intervention grant, so we'll have a much more robust agenda as far as agency items. But what we also are planning on is to bring in testimony and informational hearings from some of our grantees. And so what we have so far that I'd like to run by the commission is an offer from our colleagues here in Marion County for a tour of their transition center to demonstrate and to really show the commission what justice reinvestment funding is paid for over the past several biennia, so including their 416 program and other types of programming that CJC is funding. To do that, we would probably want to plan that outside of the commission meeting itself, and so it may look more like maybe an 11 o'clock start down here in Salem. Then we could depart their transition center to have our meeting in the early afternoon. Of course, we all know that things like hearings and those types of things come up, but I was wanting to know if that was something that folks were supportive of, if we're going to go through the trouble of coming together in person, trying to do a little bit more as far as seeing the types of programs our dollars are supporting. Right now, we're scheduled for March 22nd. That's probably one of the more important pieces to make sure that that's on folks' radars. But just trying to take the temperature of the room. We're hoping to make this a more regular thing if we do quarterly meetings, but I know for this first one, I'm worried about short notice and making sure people could actually attend. So curious to hear commissioners' thoughts on doing a little field trip in addition to our normal commission meeting.
Well, I'll open it up for all commissioners to each chime in. I like the idea. I've got March 22nd plugged out, but I had it plugged out a while ago. I think it'd be great to have in-person meetings again. So I like all of that, but I'm just one person. So anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Solomon. I wholly support the in-person meetings again. I know it's a little bit of a drive for some of us, but I think there's real value in meeting in person, particularly when we have more robust agendas, and would also support touring the transition center if I can make that work time-wise. Where would the commission meeting be held? Would it be at the CJC office or in a hearing room in the Capitol?
Well, the space is extraordinarily limited in the Capitol, so we weren't planning there. But what we have done is we've booked a space at the Fish and Wildlife Building that's a little bit closer to the interstate. It also has easier parking, and so we are trying to make things as easy as possible. So our plan would be to hold that at Fish and Wildlife. It would also be pretty convenient if we do come from some of the Marion County buildings as well. So that's our plan right now. As soon as I kind of get a critical mass from you all today, we'll start sending out details to hold some calendar time. We've got a lot of the logistics working in the background, but we'll make sure that everybody knows what that would look like. Oh, you're muted, Vice Chair.
Any other commissioners want to chime in? Thoughts?
That plan.
Beach. Oh.
Right. I was just going to pass on that plan sounds great and that date works for me. So
excellent.
And I fully support in-person meetings. I think it generates robust discussions, and the fact that we can learn about other programs across the state would be really interesting to me. I will note I have a 4 p.m. lipstick meeting that particular day in March. So I don't know what you were thinking, Ken, or if you even gotten to that point where you're thinking about the time duration of the meeting time. Of course, I would advocate for a full day because it sounds like we could fill it, certainly. I just wanted to mention that particular date's a little difficult for me later in the afternoon.
I think for the afternoon, we'd still keep it at 1 to 3 for the formal portion of the meeting. We'd be looking at just a little bit earlier for the transition center tour. So hopefully that would give you enough time to get back.
I think that would work just great. And we're still continuing to meet virtually. So that would be quite simple. Gives me an hour to get somewhere where I can tune in.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, excellent. I mean, it sounds like we have a pretty good critical mass there. So we'll be following up pretty quickly with some details for everybody so we can get some holds on the calendars there. And then what we would be looking for is maybe July for our next in-person meeting on our little road trip here. I'm thinking July because then we know that legislative session will be over. I think normally I would have thought June, but I don't want to risk it. And I would love to be able to get some of our legislative folks out too. So more to come there. As far as our legislative update from the agency, we're tracking literally hundreds of bills. As most of you know, CJC is often used as a placeholder, so I'm not going to go down that full roster. If you've been around for these legislative updates in the past, I just try to give a rundown of the bills that we are most paying attention to at the moment that could have an impact on CJC. No need to take notes, though. I will include this as an email follow-up after I do this quick rundown, so it'll be rather quick. So we have 3 House bills that we're tracking right now. One is House Bill 2320. That would establish a juvenile justice commission at or within the CJC. The idea would be to bring essentially representatives who have been serving on various task forces related to Senate Bill 1008 that passed a few sessions ago, and to provide a more permanent home for policy recommendations and policy making regarding juvenile justice that sits outside of the normal system players. That bill has had a public hearing back at the end of January, and it's a bill that's being championed by Representative Krupp, who's the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. And so I think that assuming that funding could be provided for staff that CJC would need, that bill could be moving forward. Another one that is having a public hearing tomorrow is House Bill 2731. That would extend the Family Preservation Project grant program that we have. I call it a program. It's just a pass-through grant to the Family Preservation Project, which is run by the YWCA of Greater Portland. However, unlike the previous version, which funded the program for a single biennium, this would provide more stable funding for a longer period of time. The last House bill we're tracking right now does not necessarily mention the Criminal Justice Commission. It's House Bill 2829. That would establish a grant program funding veterans courts at the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs. We're working with ODVA to both provide technical assistance there, but then also we have made it known to the bill sponsor, Representative Evans, that given that we already administer a grant program for specialty courts, and we could actually use that money in a way that is much more fiscally neutral, since we wouldn't need, ODVA would have to stand up a grant arm to do this. We would not. That we would be more than willing to take that on if he saw fit. We're also tracking 5 Senate bills. The first is Senate Bill 236, which modifies use of force reporting. One of the items that we are going to bring to you next month in our in-person meeting is an initial look at use of force reporting that we have already been mandated to do through prior bills. And so this would add new responsibilities, and we can provide updates at that time as we provide the data that we've already collected for the past year. The next one is Senate Bill 524. That directs the Criminal Justice Commission to convene a council to study disqualifying convictions that fall under the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission. That is being proposed by some folks in Multnomah County who are connected into that world. That one has not been scheduled for public hearing yet, but it's certainly one that we're monitoring as it may require staff assistance for that one. The next one is Senate Bill 586, which makes communications in our restorative justice program confidential. This does not include funding for the program. That would come through our formal budget bill, but it does change some of the program rules that we would likely have to adjust at the commission, just to bring our administrative rules into agreement with that statute if it passes. That had a public hearing back on the 9th, and it has been scheduled for work session a few times. It has then been pushed out, so I expect to see that one continue.
Can
Senate
you,
Bill.
can you explain the intent of that one a little more?
Oh, sure, Commissioner Solomon. Yes. So the intent there is there's a lot of focus within the restorative justice community that, especially if we're trying to get folks into a restorative justice program, to engage in a dialogue that is outside of the criminal justice process. What happens if during those dialogues the individual caused harm actually admits to certain evidence, items that could then be admitted as evidence in a later prosecution. And so there's worries about there being a chilling effect on participation if that's not the case. And so that is a bill that is, it's not an agency bill of ours. It's been put forward by Senator Jama. And so that is being primarily shepherded through by some members of our of our RJ Grant Review Committee, RJ Co. and the other folks who are more squarely in that realm. So we're monitoring it, especially from that rules perspective. But that's the intent behind extending confidentiality to certain situations there.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that, because I know that was an issue for members of the Racial Justice Council's Criminal Justice Reform and Police Accountability Committee as well.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. So this is the home that work is found. The two other bills. First is Senate Bill 597. That continues the U visa reporting program that we have had at the CJC for the past few years. This is a bill being proposed by Senator Taylor. That original program had a sunset that has just passed, and so this would revive that effort. And I did not check up to see exactly what happened this morning rather, but 597 was up for a third reading on the Senate floor, and so I'll provide more information in my follow-up email since I've not been able to check it. The last bill I'll mention is SB 5505. That is the Criminal Justice Commission's budget bill. We had our informational hearing on Monday of last week. I think that hearing went very well. We had a public hearing the next day. I'm very pleased to report that we had so many individuals and organizations that came to support our budget that they could not all be heard. We ran out of time. We had a number of folks who were recipients of different justice reinvestment services or other related services that came to testify. It was an amazing reminder that we at the commission, while in some ways all we do is push dollars and do paperwork, sometimes when it comes to our grants, the money that goes out really provides for some amazing services and some amazing stories of redemption, and really helps some folks who before they encountered justice reinvestment programs, they had been individuals involved in the system over and over and over for years and years. So that was very, very heartwarming, if nothing else. But our budget now, it's in the hands of LFO and the Public Safety Subcommittee. I'm glad to have that part finished, and we're now moving forward on more of the policy angle. And on that, I'll just mention the two other pieces that we have going on. We have one agency bill related to jail oversight. So basically jail healthcare. That is a bill that comes from a report that we filed last September, and it is going to be introduced as a committee bill in the House, but we don't have a House number for that yet. The second one is that we also need to make sure that justice reinvestment, now that I've just talked about the amazing results that we've been able to get, is extended. That will also be a bill we will need to fill to do a gut and stuff of a placeholder for that. And we're currently working behind the scenes to make that happen. And I'll provide an update as to what that bill number is when that comes through. And that's my legislative update. So any questions on in-person meeting or legislative pieces, like I said, I'll follow up in an email so you can actually track all those numbers if that's something you'd like to do.
Any questions for Ken? Oh, it looks like Commissioner Solomon does. Go ahead.
No, I can't help myself. Ken, speaking of jail healthcare, are you tracking at all the Medicaid waiver process in Oregon and the efforts underway to get CMS to adjust their criteria around Medicaid exclusion for people in jail custody?
That is something that we're tracking. It's not something that I'm tracking myself as directly, but we do have staff. We're following that to ensure that we're up to date on both some of the legislative efforts, and then there's the federal efforts, but then also, yes, within OHA, trying to get more information on that. So I don't have a great deal of detail. We can follow up with that, but it's something we're certainly keeping our eye on.
Yeah, I just think it's a really important issue. I
Yep.
mean, it has the potential to provide quite a bit of relief to local jails if they make the change. And I know that California just had their Medicaid waiver approved that actually allowed for treatment in jails, unlike the waiver that was approved here in Oregon, which does allow for some unique things that include providing or paying for transitional or housing for people coming out of state correctional and the state hospital institutions. But I know that OHA is going to be in rule writing for the next year before any of that comes to pass. So all things that I'm very interested in, and I think have some nexus in the work that we do.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're very interested in it as well. We do have some funding that goes towards some medication and other some other jail costs within some of our other grant programs, like the Impacts Grant Program. So we're definitely following that. And I also just got a quick note, unrelated to jails, but that Senate Bill 597 for U visa did pass this morning in the Senate.
Great. Any other questions for Ken? Not seeing any. Any other further updates from CJC, Ken? Looks like we got Kelly next.
Kelly will have a quick update, and then Ryan will have a quick update, but it'll be rather fast. So thank you.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bovet and Commissioners. Yes, I do have a relatively quick update, and I just wanted to give you all an update on our use of force collection and first report, somewhat related to what Ken described with some legislative bills. I'll just kind of focus on what the research team is working on. So as a reminder, in 2021, the legislature passed House Bill 2932, and that required law enforcement agencies to participate in the FBI's use of force data collection. And that data collection effort started January 1, 2022. So we have received an initial query of that data from Oregon State Police just 3 weeks ago. Received kind of the first pull of that data. Most agencies have participated and reported in that program. A few agencies were missing the final months of the year, so it may be reported through October, and we're missing November and December. And a few agencies had not yet reported, but those tended to be smaller agencies, and with, I'm sure, staff turnover, being short-staffed, those types of things. Completely understand those challenges. And so OSP has sent out a reminder. We've sent out a few reminders. So we're hoping to pull the final data actually on March 1st. And hopefully that will be close to final. And then we'll be ready to move forward with the reporting effort for that. And that will be the first use of force report for Oregon. So a new source of use of force data for the CJC to look at, and then the first report to go out for that effort. So we are anticipating, just as Ken mentioned, showing you a preview of what that's looking like at the next commission meeting, and then finalizing that report here early spring to get that out to be publicly available information across the state. And that's my research update for you all. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Kelly? Look forward to seeing that report. I suspect a lot of people are. So,
yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Ryan, I guess you're up in the hot seat next.
Yes, indeed. Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to provide a brief programs update as well, particularly around the federal funding known as SCIP, State Crisis Intervention Program. If you recall, we started mentioning it around October, and in December we met or talked to the commission around an application had been submitted and the development of an advisory board to oversee that work. So that application was accepted and we did receive our award. I wanted to provide that important update. As of February 13th, the Freds did approve us for the grant. It's $3.1 million to be utilized over, till 2026, although I imagine we'll get started sooner than that. So that's the good news. The advisory board is coming together as well. We're still looking to fill those 21 seats that the commission approved. So working on that and intend to have that roster ready for you all for the March meeting, and kind of availability of those folks will then determine when we get started from there. So that was the main thing. And then as Ken mentioned, we do have our grant cycle as early as it feels. It's happening for 23-25 funding contingent. So we will go over a kind of a robust description of both the JRI and the specialty court program timelines and process for the next cycle when we get together in March.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ryan. Any questions or comments for Ryan? Look forward to that as well. All right. Well, Ken, I think that covers it. Is there anything else we need to talk about before we call this one a day? I see.
That covers it for staff, Vice Chair, but certainly I'd love to hear from Jake.
No, great. Jake, we're kind of winding up here, so feel free to have at it.
Commissioner, I just wanted to take a second and say over the last couple of years, I've had a few opportunities to testify on behalf of the CJC, and as a small frontier county that utilizes the funding from the CJC and specialty court and justice reinvestment for our treatment court program, the work that's been done on CJC's side of things, as responsive as they are and as outgoing as they are to provide us with the information we need and the assistance we need, it's done a 360 from 10 years ago when we first started this process to where we are now. And it's a great feeling knowing in Lakeview I can pick up the phone and call and talk to somebody and get a question answered, if not immediately, within the next day. So I just wanted the commission to know that the work that the Criminal Justice Commission staff are doing, including Ken, is phenomenal. And the information that's provided to us, whether we like the information or not, is always useful and beneficial. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Jake. Very much appreciated. I would echo everything you've just said. I'm just serve on the commission. The staff is just phenomenal at CJC, in my humble opinion, and I've just enjoyed Ken's leadership and during the last few years. So thank you very much, Jake. Anybody else have any parting words or comments? I guess we'll all see each other in person next month.
Yep. Details to follow. Look forward to seeing everybody in person. Thank you so much, Jake, for those kind words. We really appreciate that here.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.